What is up, OakLife Familia? Welcome to another episode of Roots and Branches. I am Greg, no Chris, just Greg, but I am here with special guests. I'm here with Charlotte. I'm here with Darren. They're representing the OakLife Justice Team, basically the Justice League for OakLife, so that's pretty dope. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Let us know your involvement with the Justice Team, and we'll start by the order in which you logged on. So Charlotte, take it away. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I was the host of the Justice Team in my house before the pandemic, and now I'm just the most ardent and researcher and shrill campaigner for it. So, that's what I'm doing.
Dope. Right on, right on. Darren, how about you?
Yeah, so my name is Darren Newell, and I helped get the team started. I schedule the meetings, try to help keep it going. But yes, just glad to be a part of it.
Well, I'm glad to have you. Glad to have you. We basically have a simple conversation, informal, get to know what's going down with the Justice Team. That being said, there's been some talk around masks, creating masks, partnership with the homeless. Either one of you, feel free to chime in again. This is a super, super casual conversation. Give us some updates. What are some things that you want the broader community to know about this mask initiative?
Well, I think the masks are so important to donate to the homeless people of Oakland because they don't have access to transit or buying food from stores unless they have masks. I was going to Sweet Adeline to get some coffee the other day, and this homeless man entered the store without a mask. And the employee immediately had to evict him out of the store. She knew his name. She was like, Michael, with her hands like this and just sort of shooing him out of the store because it wasn't legal for him to be there, even though he was really hungry and, confused and used to getting food there. So, the sooner we get the masks, the sooner we can get them access to the basic needs the rest of us all take for granted.
100% agree. It's one of those things that is a sad shortfall of a lot of our government policies is they implement a mandate that people don't necessarily have the means to follow. And there isn't necessarily a lot done to ensure that people can follow those protocols. So yeah, we're stepping in because it's needed, but we're also wanting to call attention to it from our county and city to make them reflect and recognize that not everybody has the same footing to just go out and buy a mask, which is what's been implied that everybody needs to do is just buy their own masks.
Right on. I definitely. Oh, go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah, I think that the neglect of the homeless people during the pandemic has been not only inhumane, but dangerous to the rest of the community. The hand sanitizer stations they set up, they only set them up erratically. There was a journalism piece about how they were not being refilled. Garbage pickup to the homeless camps is erratic. And so they don't have the resources they need to stay hygienic. And staying hygienic is very important for everyone's safety right now. And I really felt when we were calling the city and the county about getting homeless people access to hotel rooms because there was money in the budget for that, but there was too much red tape, so the homeless people weren't getting into the hotel rooms. It was this really frustrating thing where the city was just like, the county is responsible, and the county was just like, the city was responsible. Do you remember that, Darren? It was so weird. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was like the city was saying, we're doing everything to take care of it already. Don't worry about it. The county was like, yeah, we're concerned about this. We can't find hotels, and then, the red tape aspect of it. And, when you tried calling the places that when it came down to it, it's funny because the response to a lot of what's happened in this pandemic has been from a public, administered through the public health departments of different counties. And the public health departments have also played an outsized role in the homeless response prior to COVID-19. They have like tracking systems for where people are and their health histories, et cetera. And it's, how do you say it? I mean, I think what Charlotte was saying earlier was a good point about how the neglect of our homeless populations prior to the pandemic has only just continued on. And so it's no surprise that we're seeing this kind of neglect. So it's definitely concerning. But a lot of the county officials don't seem to be wanting to take any responsibility.
That's mad unfortunate. There's obviously a lot of energy and attention just in listening to both of your responses around this particular issue. For those who may not have been around the OakLife community for the past year or so in the whole development process of the Justice Team, can either one of you speak to why there's focus around the homeless community at this time?
Sure. I can start off. So when we convened, a couple of our members had experience working with justice issues with other church communities, and they found it was really important that we do listening before we decide on an issue or focus. And we knew that our resources as a justice team, being volunteer-based and coming together periodically, that we really only had enough space to focus on one particular thing if we wanted to be successful, meaning that if we wanted to make an impact. And so in our listening sessions, we talked with our community. We did individual one-on-one meetings or conversations, and there were a huge range of issues, but the one that we leaned towards or went with was what came up the most often, which was the concern over our homeless populations. And it definitely makes sense that this is the number one thing people are thinking about. It's super visible. Since 2014, the numbers have just skyrocketed. It's pretty remarkable how prevalent of a problem that is in the Bay Area. So in that response, we really wanted to make sure that our work would center the voices of the people who are most hurt by the injustices going on. And to clarify, when we talk about justice work, we're not just wanting to alleviate conditions that people face by providing them supplies or resources, but we also really want to address the systemic roots to what causes them to hurt in the first place. So our sort of idea was ending the systems that hurt people, and not just aiding. And so.
So how that works out with the mask issue is we give them masks, but we also call up the city and say, why are you not giving them masks? Why doesn't this system serve them? And you have to have both pieces. Otherwise, you're just putting on Band-Aids forever. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I think that there's, were you going to say something, Darren?
Mm-hmm.
Just that, of course, our work in deciding how we would move forward was first making sure that we did enough research. So when we decided on this issue back last August or September, we were making sure to reach out to a number of different organizations that worked with homeless populations, and we made some great connections and started doing, we wanted to start doing some advocacy work around ending the displacement of homeless people, which was going on. And then the pandemic struck, which just put a huge turn on a lot of things. So that pandemic response has been sort of our major focus as of recently. And doing things that we also know can be done from a distance, while maintaining social distancing while people are at home. So it's presented some unique challenges, but that's how we've come to make these choices about what kind of focuses and what kind of specific issues we took on when dealing with homelessness.
Darren, will you show them how to make the masks and tell them how to pick up the masks before I get too excited talking about politics?
You read my mind, Charlotte. Yes.
So the mask project was something that was inspired by actually one of our church members, Brenda, who works with a lot of homeless folks out in San Francisco. And she was mentioning about this issue of people not having any masks to wear. And the thing is that disposable ones wear out very, very quickly. So she was trying to put forward an idea of creating cloth masks that people can just cut out from home. although all forms of masks help immensely. So, continuing to get supply out there, no matter what they are, is great. But her cutout that one of her coworkers came up with is it's very basic. It's just literally an oval with two little oval cutouts for the ear holes on the sides. And you would get, fortunately we were able to purchase some with the support of some of our Justice Team members. And notably Charlotte, thank you for that. But we get about enough supply to cut about 20 masks per person. And so if you volunteer, there's a roster that is going to be sent out with future Justice Team emails, OakLife emails, and is also on the original email in the blog post with a sign-up sheet. So if you would like to help make cutouts, we will be providing you with material, doing our best to get them out to you as feasible. And
yeah, so the fabric is funded by donations from our Emergency Benevolence Fund, but you can make masks with fabric you already have. You can buy masks if you really hate being crafty, or you can request the fabric supply from us, which is enough to make 20 masks. And so there's a lot of options in terms of joining our homeless mask drive. And Darren, do you want to share the address for mask drop-off and the time slots?
Yeah, absolutely. So the drop-off points is actually at the OakLife Church office, and that is located at the Howden Building, which is in downtown Oakland. And the specific address is 337 17th Street. And so you'll find Greg or I there Mondays from 12 to 2, I believe. I have to double check those times. I believe it's 12 to 2, and then on Thursdays from 10 until 12:30.
Whatever the time is, I'll make sure it's in the comment section or the caption below. So all good.
Beautiful. Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, and we talked about how much research we did to make sure that we were taking the right type of action to help homeless people. And for me, the research journey was really shocking because I expected that Oakland was doing everything it could to help homeless people, but there just wasn't enough resources. That was my assumption going into the research. And then it became very clear that every organization we talked to said that the main problem homeless people had is that police and city officials would be sent to evict them from their encampments. And so if you were evicting them from their camp and providing them with homes elsewhere, that would make sense. It would also be legal. It's actually illegal to evict homeless people if you don't offer them another place to go. It's a violation of their constitutional rights as per a Supreme Court case, which we can also put in the comments of this YouTube video. But Oakland doesn't care that it's legal or not. It gets calls from not in my backyard people, from the NIMBY people, and then they send police to chase the homeless people out of their encampment and to another location. It's completely pointless. It's like when you're a kid and your parents said, clean your room, and you're like, oh, I'll be clever and I'll move my pile of toys to a less obvious part of my room, and then they'll be like, oh, good job. Well, it doesn't make any sense. And it's also actively harmful to homeless people because when they're pointlessly moved from one park to another, they lose possessions. They don't have a car to pack their possessions up into. If they are not there at the time of the eviction, their possessions are just thrown away. Imagine if someone could go to your house and throw away all your stuff whenever they want it. What would that feel like? They get their IDs thrown away. They get their job applications thrown away. It's not that we don't have enough money to help them. It's that we're actively spending money on things that make their lives way worse. And that's how I realized there's a connection between the police department and homelessness, because we're funding the police solution instead of funding the homeless services solution. Our money is going to this time for police officers to frighten and scare these helpless people to get them to move along. And that just is unacceptable, in my opinion.
That's well said. I love the passion, and I love the research around what is actually taking place, because I think a lot of community members, myself included, are not as available to research and get the actual information, and we are just kind of expected to just kind of follow what we're told. So that being said, I know that there's some works going around regarding the public safety committee thing going on. Could either one of you speak to that for the Justice Team?
Yeah, so there's been a nationwide defund police movement, and in Oakland, the cuts to police were very minor, even though hundreds of constituents were calling and demanding cuts to police. And so the compromise with the people demanding change versus the status quo is they're setting up a reimagining public safety committee to study how we can make significant cuts to police and develop other systems of community safety. And the recommendations of that committee will be voted on next year. So I view sort of the activism now is making sure that committee gets good information, makes a good plan, and doesn't get ignored in next year's vote. And if you remove the police without having alternative systems of public safety, it can cause huge problems. So even though it felt very disappointing that there was very little action in response to the defund OPD protests, if we can develop strong public safety systems that are an alternative to the police in the year of extra time we have, we could make our defunding program more successful than other cities that do it more hastily. And so if you want to get involved in city politics, answering the surveys about reimagining public safety they plan on sending out, and just keeping a tab on local news very closely is very important to do. Do you have more to add, Darren? I know that you were watching the live tweeting of the city council meeting, right, with me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's always a couple different groups that have been pretty active in the campaign and have put together a lot of research as well that is just helpful to review from the framework of how can we reimagine public safety, where can we put funding towards instead. And so, yeah, I could bring up some of those or mention some of them. I'm not sure if that's really the most helpful. I think what you were saying though, Charlotte, is probably the most like the best way to stay active in that particular framework. And also, if you have particular ideas about ways that our church can have an active role in it, you can always come and join us at our community justice team meetings, which you can email me to get added to the email list. I can make sure to add you on to future invitations.
Say your email.
Right, my email for this is darren@oaklifechurch.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That too will be below. You can click on it, get all that information. So that's beautiful. If individuals want to help out on more of a compassion-based side and tackle the task of making masks, that rhymed unintentionally. Hey, that's good stuff. Then they can reach out to you and make that happen. If they have more of a heart around the public safety, the issues that are more systemic, more long-term, they can join the Justice Team. I love that. I love that plug. Is there anything you want to say about those two topics specifically? Anything else may not have been mentioned yet?
Yeah. So the protests are probably going to continue. And this is the third longest protest movement in our nation's history. And we're recording this now on July 27th. Tomorrow, July 28th of 2020, there's going to be a city council meeting where Oakland plans how they will respond if uninvited federal troops enter the city to quash protests. And so if that's something you have an opinion on, it's worth calling into the city council meeting on noon tomorrow. I'm sure many of you have been following the clashes between protesters and federal troops in Portland. We are literally living through history right now. And my grandchildren are going to ask me, what were you doing at this historic time? And I'd be like, I was cleaning my room, actually, and going to bed early for the most historic moment.
I was on a Google Hangout call with my bros. That brings up a really good point. We are definitely entering a time that is not only historic, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And us being part of OakLife Church, a faith-based community, there's individuals who are also representatives of our Christian faith-based community that may ask the question, what does all of this social focus, justice, politics have to do with our faith? I'm sure that every one of us have a response to that. But Charlotte, you were touching on that a little earlier before we started recording, and I wanted to hear what your thoughts were around faith and politics as we kind of close up our session today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of Christians I know who feel strongly that religion should be apolitical, and I think a lot of that is the backlash against the damage the Christian right has done in this country. And they're just like, oh, we shouldn't be right or left, we should just be Christians. We don't want the Christian left to cause as much damage as the Christian right has already done. Let's not tangle Jesus up in messy business. But that's not the way I think about it, because I think Jesus should be part of every way in which you are alive. And being a citizen and a political being is one of the ways I am alive. So how do I bring Jesus into this part of myself? I think it's about loving your enemy. It's about understanding every time someone harms someone else, they also harm themselves. So if I hold people accountable to stop causing harm, that's a way of loving them, because they're not going to feel this spiritual damage that comes from hurting another person if I can help hold them accountable. And so, you know, grace and accountability need to be held in tension. But if you really love your enemy, you won't allow them to commit evil, because that's going to just sort of slash at the interconnected web that all human beings are a part of. And so that means that, like, when I think about the protesters in Portland, I'm definitely praying for the people on both sides. It's terrifying, probably, to be a federal agent with the protests just getting bigger and bigger, no matter how much tear gas and how many flashbangs you throw into them. Like, that's a terrifying situation to be in. And then the protesters who are getting seriously injured by the people in their own country and, like, feeling the free speech rights of America disappear, that's terrifying too. And so the conflict has to de-escalate, and the violence against Black people has to stop on across the country. There needs to be systemic changes to make that stop, because we can never overlook that the image of God, lives in every single human being, and that whatever we do to the least powerful person, we are doing to Jesus. So that's the way I think about it. And Darren, I remember you saying that actually your background in organizing was part of what led you to faith.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of different phrases and things that people would call out and point to, which I don't want to necessarily just lean on, because I feel like that can kind of narrow things down too much, or I don't know how to say it. Like, there's always a lot of context to phrases that get left out when they're just made into sayings. But there's definitely a number of different pastors and faith communities that I worked alongside that, number one, showed me that, communities of faith are organized communities. That's just part of, how we come together. It's always about how we show love to one another. And so, for me, that politics, is sort of the abstract, which in a very real way plays out in our day-to-day lives, of course, as just merely like relationships that we all hold with one another. No matter what position someone is in, you can see how their view of relationships plays out, like the importance of other human beings' lives, and whether or not those things are being valued over material wealth or just intangible power. And so yeah, and as I did my organizing previously, the way that things fell together and connections that were being made, just seemed like something only God could do. And, they're just, people would reunite and meet each other after years of being separated, not knowing, or like you would just wonder, how in the world am I going to make this happen? Fighting to renovate an office that would get medical care for people with only donations. Like, well, how do you do that? And by aiming for it and working towards it, seeing that as you would meet people of faith talking to you, like this would be something that Jesus would be doing. You can see that that the way God worked through people, it motivated them to contribute and be part of it. And that effort for change doesn't need to carry labels with it in terms of left or right or Republican or Democrat, but it does have to be a force for love that stands against evil. So it's not just passively being there and watching atrocities happen. And so that's where I fall in this.
That's dope. And that's dope. I gotta say, the more and more I study this gospel, this understanding of Christianity, the more and more I understand that at the intersections of it all, restorative justice is pretty much the heart of it. So the work that you are both doing, that the entire justice team is doing, a part of OakLife, is such a bright and brilliant reflection of what the gospel teaches and is and calls us to. So I tip my hat to you both. Can't thank you enough. What you're doing is invaluable. So very much appreciate not only your energy on that, but your attention and your time here. We're about to kind of wrap this up. Is there anything that you want to either remind or share with our OakLife community before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I feel like probably all of you really, really want to help, but especially with the pandemic, just getting through the daily things is a struggle. Like sometimes I feel like I'm swimming through mud, and then I poke my nose above the mud and I'm like, and then I'm back in the mud. And so like, why would you spend like energy and time on something that's like extra when you're in survival mode? So what I've found is in local politics, you have a huge amount of power. When you read the national news, you feel pretty powerless. But you can call up your council member or tweet your council member, and your opinion will be very influential with them. And, the actions you take locally can make a big difference really fast. And so doing something that gives me a sense of control and power personally helps me with depression. I mean, gives me more of those moments where my nose is up in the air, just sort of above this pandemic bog. So that's why I would encourage you to give it a try and get involved if you're thinking about getting involved. All y'all out there beyond my webcam.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Anything else, Darren?
Not at this moment, but I appreciate the support and involvement of everyone who's been a part of this, and it's been really profound. So
awesome. You heard it here. You heard it from Charlotte. Get involved. It's okay to be in the mud. Come up for air every now and then. You're not alone. Love you, OakLife. Be well. Continue to live, love, fight, and follow, fam. And I'll catch you on the next go. Peace out.
God bless you.